I want to bring in Roshni for more on the story. Roshni joins us from Mumbai. Also, famous author and Canadian journalist Terry Milewski joins us on the broadcast. But before I come to Terry Milewski, Roshni, just explain the anger in Mumbai and tell us what kind of a concert is being planned. Are they actually going ahead with this?
Absolutely. This has been noticed that after his distorted map picture has been going viral and tremendous outrage in the people that has been noticed. People have been showing their anger by on Twitter hashtagging he's out about the anger. Also in Mumbai, it has been noticed that he was supposed to perform on a cruise from September 23rd to 25th, but now since the Bharatiya Janata Yuva Morcha has been extending their anger and even have filed FIR against him for posting such an image of map where there has been that has been showing that omitting Punjab, Kashmir, Jammu and the Northeast has been really disheartening for them as well, because if you're coming to Mumbai, performing, asking people to watch you, and then you are posting something like that is extremely heartbreaking for them as well.
Roshni, stay with me for a moment. I want to bring in Terry Milewski into this conversation, and Terry is the author of Blood for Blood, 50 years of the global Khalistan project. Terry Milewski, as always, welcome on India Today, sir. Sir, even as we speak, there is breaking news that's coming in that Canada has issued a travel advisory. Canada does not want its citizens to travel to India and does not want any non-essential travel to India. What do you make of this provocation by Justin Trudeau, and what do you make of his statement, sir?
I would say get used to it, because now we're at the beginning of a whole series of provocations. You've seen the Shub map, you've seen the travel warning for Canadians traveling to India. There is going to be a bare-knuckles brawl now between the two countries as a result of Trudeau's statement yesterday that he figures he has evidence that India has been sending hit squads out and has committed murder on Canadian soil. So far, the real issue is the hole in the heart of what Trudeau said, the whole being the complete lack of evidence. The evidence has been lacking ever since June the 18th, when Hardeep Nijjar was gunned down. At the time, the Khalistani movement in Canada and elsewhere said, oh, the Indians did it, because apparently a series of 3 Khalistani leaders died at various places around the world. There was no connection. There was no evidence that India was involved, but they treated it as an article of faith. It's like old-time religion. You had to believe it. All the Khalistanis were singing from the same song sheet. Now they're going to be stepping it up. And you've seen 2 different ways, the travel warning, the Shub map. You'll see lots of other ways where they'll manage to keep up the heat for the lack of evidence, because they've got to cover up that lack of evidence is the problem. The problem is Trudeau needs to come across and say, well, does he have the goods? Does he have hard evidence to show that India was involved in this? And if so, where is it? And if he won't show it, and he says, oh, well, it's classified, I can't talk about it, I mustn't interfere with the investigation. Well, he just did interfere with the investigation by making this announcement, didn't he?
In fact, that's the
results of the
point I was
investigation.
coming to.
And
that's the point I'm coming to. When the Prime Minister of a country, midway through investigations, because if investigations are not over, talks about things like that is credible allegation. So it's a credible allegation, no, not evidence, of a potential link, which would mean a link hasn't been established. Does this indicate that Justin Trudeau, 1, has jumped the gun? 2, in your appreciation, why would he do so?
Well, he's jumping the gun, yes, and the answer to why would he do it is because he's in a big hole. He's down in the polls, way down in the polls. If there were an election held tomorrow, there won't be, but if there were, then the Conservatives would almost certainly win it. And he's facing a tiredness on the part of Canadians that he's had his turn. It's time for a change. And so then add to that the humiliation that he receives at the hands of Narendra Modi at the G20 in New Delhi, with Modi basically giving him a sort of not very diplomatic punch in the nose for harboring people who are painting targets on the backs of Indian diplomats by putting out these killer posters naming diplomats from India as killers of Hardeep Nijjar and the rest. And add to all of this the fact that not only is there no evidence that we know of to back up what the Prime Minister is saying, add to this the fact that at the same time, the police have said nothing. They have not identified the shooters, never mind the people who paid them. We're looking presumably for some Indian government hand in recruiting whoever it was that actually did the shooting. That's the way it goes in Surrey. Almost every weekend you have some shooting. But the police have said nothing about any Indian hand in this, and they have not even arrested the people who did the shooting. That suggests that this hole in the heart of what Trudeau said, this lack of evidence, is even bigger than I said.
That's a very big statement you're making. So the police in Surrey, the police in Canada have made no arrests. They haven't named anyone. And the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, has gone ahead and linked this to India. But sir, I want to understand from you, Terry Milewski, is India's request for action against Khalistani elements in Canada an unreasonable demand? Are there Khalistan terror supporters in Canada? And you've studied the subject extensively.
The answer is yes, there are. And no, they are not reined in as much as they could be. For example, I'll just give you one example. 17 years ago, in 2006, Britain updated its legislation to ban and criminalize the glorification of terrorism. There are probably 30 other countries in Europe who have done the same since then. Canada has not. So it is completely normal and legal in Canada to praise and exalt and to glorify the Air India bomber, no less. The Kanishka bomber, Talvida Parmar, killed 331 innocent civilians by blowing up a plane. To put him up on the wall of a Gurdwara, a life-size glorious portrait with ceremonial sword, ornate turban, the works. It's completely normal and legal in Canada to parade through the streets of Toronto on the back of a truck with a life-size diorama celebrating the assassination of Indira Gandhi in 1984. It's legal and it's normal in Canada to have these posters identifying the names and the pictures of diplomats. We want you to go and get these guys, and we're going to call them killers and offer rewards of $10,000 for the home addresses of these diplomats that we want you to go and get. All of this is normal and legal. The glorification of terrorism is legal in Canada. It must not be. That's one giant step that Canada could take and still hasn't.
But why hasn't Canada taken this step? Because I want to understand from you, anywhere in the civilized world, there'd be anger and outrage if somebody were to say that planes would fall off the skies and then go ahead and kill 50,000 Hindus, and yet somebody like that would be shielded in Canada, and not just Justin Trudeau, but as you've written in your book, by Pierre Trudeau failing to hand over the suspects before that bombing took place. Didn't India warn Canada? So there's a long history of this.
Oh, yeah, and it's as bad as you make it sound. It's actually worse. I mean, don't get me started on this. The specific and timely, urgent warnings came in, weeks before the Air India bombing. The CSIS officers, the intelligence officers of the Canadian government, actually followed them into the woods for a test bombing 3 weeks before the real thing. And in Toronto, they received a telex from Air India saying, look, we're getting all kinds of intelligence and threats. They're going to try to smuggle a bomb in the luggage on one of our planes. We've got to have airtight baggage security. What happened? The RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, put it on a shelf. They didn't do anything about it. Nothing at all. They ignored it. And said, well, those Indians, they're just looking for more free security. We've heard it all before. They didn't take it seriously. So it's actually worse than you say. So it's not all Trudeau's fault, and it's not clear to me that the Conservatives are going to be vastly different if they took power. Fact of the matter is that the Khalistani element in Canada is powerful, disciplined, well-organized, and plugged into politics. They've been doing a great job, and they're going to keep it up now. They're going to step it up now in order to back up Trudeau with this latest risk that he has taken, that he's going to be exposed as saying more than he really should have.
That's the point I was coming to. Is there merit then that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada is doing this for vote bank politics. Is that your reading of Justin Trudeau's actions? And does the Khalistan terror support vote bank actually see him back to power like it did in 2018?
The vote bank politics is baked into the governing Liberal Party of Canada, and it has been for years, long before Trudeau, as a matter of fact. It's so baked in that they completely used to believing what they are told by Khalistani propagandists in politics and choosing to run as candidates. For example, in Vancouver, there was a famous case where the Liberal Party members of the district selected a secular moderate seat candidate to take the seat once held by Ujjal Assange.
Yes.
And the party brass came along and said, no, we want one that's endorsed by the World Sikh Organization, which is a separatist group. And they overrode their own membership in order to install him as a candidate. And he became eventually Hardeep Singh Nijjar, the defense minister. So
yes.
this kind of day-to-day accommodation and pandering to the Khalistanis is baked into the Liberal Party, and don't think for a minute that it's completely absent from the Conservative Party as well. And it's certainly present in the small party, which, as you well know, sustains the Trudeau Liberals in power, namely the NDP, which is led by Jagmeet Singh, who's a lifelong Khalistani sympathizer.
So, you know, Justin Trudeau also reached out to the US, he reached out to UK. What is Canada's reading of the response by either G7 countries or Five Eye countries?
Well, we don't really know that yet. We do know that, for example, Rishi Sunak, the British Prime Minister, took a rather different approach, did he not, at the G20, saying that we're certainly going to, he said what Modi wanted him to say, that we're not going to allow any space for extremism on the part of the Khalistanis in Britain. And Rishi Sunak came out of that smelling like a rose. He was a hero in New Delhi and said just the right thing. Didn't actually do anything particularly different. But I remind you again that Britain has acted on the glorification of terrorism. The sharp edge, the bleeding edge of Khalistani sympathies. It's one thing to say, well, you can't stop people going down the street in Canada with a flag saying Khalistan Zindabad, but you can or you should be able to stop them glorifying terrorism, inciting violence against diplomats, and praising the assassination of Indira Gandhi. So I think that what's going to happen now is you'll hear a bare-knuckle brawl, really.
Okay.
The absence of diplomacy in favor of bare-knuckle politics, as India and Canada duke it out over this. And we will have to see if Trudeau doesn't have the goods, I believe he may be finished.
Okay. So if Trudeau doesn't have the goods, he may well be finished. And Terry Milewski understands Canada. He understands Khalistan terror. He's reported on it extensively, and I will let that be the last word on this part of the show. For joining me here on India First, Terry Milewski, as always, many thanks. So brace now. Brace for the bare-knuckle brawl between Canada and India in the days and weeks ahead. And we'll be tracking that story very closely and exposing state sponsors of terror and Khalistan terror backers.